What's up, guys? Welcome back to Keeping Up with the X-Men, and we are going to talk about Grand Design number 2. Now, this was the second part to the Grand Design book. Now, there's going to be another one of these. There's Grand Design, this is the first two, and then there's another two that I believe are already being made. I've already seen like the covers for the books and everything. One of them has Wolverine on the front, and he's got the thing just like the Iceman here, where he's got the slit down the middle, and part of him is the orangish costume, the brown costume, and part of it is the tiger stripe, yellow and black, and that's the one that I prefer, to be fair. But let's go ahead and get into this. Now, Grand Design 2 continues the tradition of throwing a lot of crap at us per page. Now, this is trying to catch us up if you don't know the continuity of the X-Men. It's supposed to be like a crash course. And if you do know, it's almost like a nostalgic thing, like kind of going back through the past and seeing what you remember, what you don't remember, and what sparks emotions still and things like that, or sheds light on areas you might not have known. But it can be confusing, man. There's a lot going on here. The very first pages is Magneto, Mesmero, and Mastermind when they took over that country. We're talking like way back in like issue 4 or 5 of the original X-Men run. And so anyways, they basically take over this entire little country, and the X-Men come in and they fight them, and it shows everything going down. And during the confrontation, we learn on a page that Magneto has developed a machine where he is attempting to force genetic mutation, and they played with that concept in the first Fox X-Men movie. So this is, even for people that just watch the movies, this is not new information to you. You kind of have an idea of what this is talking about. So anyways, during the confrontation, Mastermind and Jean kind of lock into a battle for just a split second. And during that one split second, she accidentally opens herself up to Mastermind, and that sets in motion what will lead us down the path of the Dark Phoenix. So it's already laying the groundwork, and if I remember right, the groundwork was not actually laid right here. In fact, they didn't even know nothing about that Dark Phoenix crap. That is all Chris Claremont. That has nothing to do with the original stuff. But because of continuity and because of retconning and everything else, now it does. And that's the reason this book can be very confusing. Now, there's this other dude that shows up, and you see him battling. It talks about the Fantastic Four. And it talks about Namor coming back around. Man, the X-Men find themselves in the Savage Land. It talks about that. And that was the very first time that, I cannot remember this guy's name. Kazar. Kazar is his name. The dude in the Savage Lands. Well, they meet that guy, and talks about that situation and how the prehistoric world exists there. And then this guy is roaming around, and he's kind of looking for who's going to end up the embodiment for the Phoenix Force and everything like that, and they think it's Professor Xavier. It shows us that really cool moment when the X-Men had to contend with Juggernaut when he trashed through their compound. That was really cool. I enjoyed that book originally, let alone the little mark here to it. It shows the Sentinels battle. Shows the very first time that they dealt with the actual big giant Sentinels, and they had to kick those things around. And then it shows how badly they were wounded at the end and how they kind of had to get back into shape. It shows stuff about the Avengers and how the Avengers claim that the X-Men will be apprehended. And that feeds into, it's always been kind of a big thing at Marvel for Avengers versus X-Men. And not just that one event. This has been going on for years. There's a bunch of one-shots for Avengers meeting up and fighting the X-Men. It happened in the Ultimate Universe. I'm trying to remember. It was called like Ultimate Universe War or something like that, if I remember right. I kind of wish I had the books like sitting right here, but I don't. But anyways, I know that it happened there. This is a normal thing to put the X-Men against the Avengers. It's nothing new. They go back, they talk about Galactus for a little while, and just random different extremes, and they go into Mastermind, where he is kind of stalking Jean Grey, and she has left the school. So it shows that this guy tries to go on a date and yada yada, and it's actually Mastermind and all this other stuff. Basically, he manipulates her for a long time before he finally gets in there. They fight this dude, Calvin Rankin. I don't have a lot of experience with him. I know him. He can copy mutant powers. That's what he does. And he can copy multiple of them. So, I can't remember if this is the dude that became X-Man or what. But he has the powers of the entire original team. And you see a bunch of stuff with him and how he finally gets taken out. And talks about, man, it's wild. They show more Mastermind manipulation over the time, and they show Charles Xavier kind of trying to tell her, fight this. You see when Kane escaped the compound because he'd been held prisoner there for a while after they stopped him and everything. He escapes the compound, runs off. This is where he becomes kind of friends with Tom Cassidy for a little while there. Not too much to say about that, only that it happened. You see a bunch of little crossovers in this part, where it shows things like Nick Fury, and it shows things like the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, and Banshee gets taken out and captured along with Professor Xavier. The Phoenix is on its way. There's a mass battle. The X-Men get captured. After the battle, they kind of lead into the sewers. They think Professor Charles Xavier is dead. Now, in the original stuff, in the original books, it really did look like he was dead, and then later on, it was revealed, oh, I faked my death. And here, because of the retcons and everything, they kind of make it like the X-Men already knew that he was dead. That's not right. Because if you go back and you read it, it's really offsetting to think that they already knew when they have the funeral and they mourn him and all this. Like, it just seems strange. It's hard to explain, but it doesn't seem right. You see the X-Men change costumes. After they get home, they're told by S.H.I.E.L.D. that basically their operation is over. They're not going to superhero anymore. And then they change costumes. They kind of go against S.H.I.E.L.D. And they say, well, we're going to do what we're going to do because that's our situation. They actually show the new costumes right down here. These were the 80s variant costumes, if I remember right. Most of them, anyway. Well, oh, no. Most of them will proceed through the 80s. Beast will change. And I believe that Angel will change, but for the most part, that is what they will look like throughout the course of the 80s X-Men, if I remember right. Or am I thinking too far ahead? No, I believe I'm right. Through the late 70s and early 80s, I believe that's pretty much what they'll end up looking like. So anyways, it talks about how the X-Men kind of went on with their lives. There were moments where they donned the costumes and became the X-Men. For the most part, they kind of went off and tried to do their thing. Hank McCoy and Bobby kind of started living together and different things like that. It shows Polaris. Man, this is just like the last one. The book is so huge. It just goes on, and every page has something. Like, oh man, I can't remember his name. Sauron. It shows him. Like, it shows the introduction for when he came in and fought them. And, not that it, well, you know what, just to add content to the video, there is actually a reason that Sauron is a giant, evil pterodactyl man. He was originally supposed to be a giant bat, kind of like Man-Bat in the Batman enemies, the Rogues Gallery for Batman. But what happened was the comic book code at the time said no vampires. I don't know why. That seems like a strange stipulation to me, that at the time they were like, no, 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 no vampires. That is a no-go. Comics do not have vampires. Which is weird, because one of Marvel's characters at the time was Dracula, and Dracula even exists in the continuity. He even tried to get with Storm. So they kind of had to toss him, but he was a part of the Marvel Universe, and is, for that matter. He's still a part of the Marvel Universe. But anyways, he was supposed to be a Batman, but it came down that you can't do that, because if you do that, that makes him like a vampire, because he's got the whole hypnosis thing, and he's a bat, and that's a no-no, and you can't do that, and that goes against the comics code. So when he came back to write, they were like, well, what do we do with him? And they were like, I don't care, make him a pterodactyl, I don't care. And that one little strange moment in comic book history gave us Sauron, and you know what? It's funny how sometimes these things work out for the better, because I don't think this guy would have been as cool as a giant bat dude, just like Man-Bat for the Marvel Universe. I don't think that would have been as cool as the Pterodactyl Man. There's something awesome about the Pterodactyl Man. You see Magneto's special children that he made, all the mutants and whatnot that he was keeping on the island. You see that Professor Xavier and Jean kind of see that out in the galaxy there's a massing problem, and that he is being contacted by something. Something keeps reaching out to him. He keeps having nightmares, and he's just having all these problems. And this is around the time that Professor Xavier came back, because he's not dead, because, you know, oh, it was just a plan, guys, it was just a plan. And you guys were in on the plan, but you're not, because you weren't. Because if you read that, they don't know. It's just comic books in general. This happens in comic books. So if you were to read this chronologically, and say you were going through and you'd only made it through like the kind of a couple of the major arcs of the X-Men, and then you came to this and you were like, well, I'm reading the new X-Men while I'm reading the old stuff, you would get to the old stuff and see that they didn't know that Charles Xavier had died, and all the stuff with Mastermind was not laid in stone yet as to what was going on. And yet this book would be showing you that that's all happening, and you're like, no, and it's not, because I'm reading it right now and it's not, so I don't understand. This is all about trying to put all the retcons in place. That's what this book is. This book is trying to take all the retcons and stuff over the years and put it in continuity that makes sense running from start to finish. It's going to be a massive project. It probably took an outrageous amount of research, and some of it could be wrong. That's the nature of comic books. It's so big, some of it could very well be wrong. These are all the people that worked on that era of the X-Men. This ridiculous list. All these people. It's outrageous how many people contributed to X-Men. And that's a difference between comic books and manga, which I usually don't get into. But it is. It's a major difference. The huge difference between comic books and manga is that manga is usually one or two people. That's it. And they do everything. And comic books has an awful lot of writers that come in. They write 1-2 stories. If you're Chris Claremont, you write like 20 years. But that's not normal. Normally they get a run of, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years. If you're lucky, that's stretching it. So some of these guys come in for like a couple of months, and then they go off to something else, and they come in and they write for like 2 years, and then they're done. And you got somebody else that comes in. And then you've also got the multiple problem with comic books, where while X-Men is running, there's also, Uncanny X-Men. There's Blue, there's Gold, there's all this other stuff that's going on. There's one-shots, there's special events. And all of these things kind of mass into one another and they become a big giant narrative. And sometimes writers will contradict each other and things of that nature. And that's a big part of what this grand design is trying to do, is it's trying to say this is the official continuity. This is what it is. All the things that you've read over the years, they may contradict each other. Some of them may say this, may say that, may say this, may say that. This is what it is. This is the continuity. And this, hopefully, when this is done, it can be used like the writer's Bible for people that come in to work on the X-Men. That it should be required reading at Marvel that you read all of Grand Design before you can be hired to be a writer on the X-Men. And you know what? This Grand Design thing, this is a good idea. This is a good idea for every comic book. There needs to be a grand design of Marvel. There needs to be a grand design landscape book that talks about the overall continuity of Marvel, like when the X-Men came in, when the Avengers came in, when this guy showed up, different things like that. That sounds big, but we do the main things, not like, oh, on this day, frickin' this guy. Because, like, who cares about the Vanisher? Let's be realistic. Who cares? Aside from me, nobody really cares about the Vanisher. And the only reason I care about him is because I did that funny voice that one video. So, like, I think that it would be a good idea to do this for everything. Like, the Avengers needs this. The Fantastic Four needs this, and each one of these books needs to become the continuity staple, the black and white, the all-saying, the all-word, and it needs to be put in stone that anybody coming into Marvel from this point needs to know their continuity and need to read this book. You need to do this, Marvel. You really do. I know nobody from Marvel is watching me. I get that, but I'm going to say like they are anyway. If by chance, some miracle, some outrageous miracle that Marvel is actually listening, one guy somewhere in Marvel clicks on my video by accident for all I care. Guys, this grand design thing is a good idea. And it needs to happen for every major property in Marvel and become the staple that says, read this, so you know the continuity when you come into the books. Because the continuities are huge. Nobody can keep up. And this would help both your fans. It would help your bottom dollar. I know you like that one. And it would help your writers. Because there are some writers that come in that write material that don't know how the powers even work. They just do stuff. Well, you are now all caught up with X-Men Grand Design. Catch you later.